Breaking news from WRAL. Coverage you can count on.
Thank you for being with us here at 7 o'clock. We're going to begin with that breaking news. The search is on, we can say right now, for a juvenile who escaped custody at the Juvenile Detention Center in Butner. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dan Haggerty.
And I'm Ashley Rowe. They believe the escaped juvenile poses a danger to the public. We want to show him to you. You're looking at Zane Sesnick. Law enforcement says he escaped from Dillon Regional Juvenile Detention Center just before 2:30 this afternoon. DPS says he has a history of unpredictable behavior.
They did not say what charges he faces, why he was in the detention center in the first place, but WRAL is working to learn some more about Sesnick's history and his ties to our area. In the meantime, if you see him, please call police. Let's move to the weather now. The rain is moving out. Almost. As we take a look at the radar back behind us, there are a few pockets if you live in the southeastern part of the state.
Yes, after days of heat and heavy rain, we're in for some drier, cooler air. Meteorologist Mike Mays is in the WRAL Severe Weather Center with just how cool things could get in the days ahead, Mike.
It's going to feel pretty good. Some of you tomorrow morning will wake up into the 50s. That'll feel nice. There's the rain moving out. There's some rain to our north and west, but it will stay there. So I don't think we're going to see any rain tonight. And our front's passing by. High pressure's building in. There's a lot of dry air coming our way. Dew points are still high here in the upper 60s, so it still feels humid. But there's the dry air to the north. It'll punch its way in tonight. And when you wake up tomorrow morning and step outside, look at the difference. Our dew points fall through the night. By midnight, about 63. But in the morning when you step out, we'll have bright skies. It'll be breezy. The dew points down in the mid 50s, going from dew points in the 70s over the past few days when the air feels so heavy because there's so much moisture. Won't feel that tomorrow morning. It'll be a nice start to the day. And in the coming days, we had 93 yesterday. We had 84 today. Notice there's no big heat in the area over the next 7 days. Our normal high now is dipped to 86 and 79 tomorrow with dew points in the 50s, 81 on Wednesday. And even as the week goes on and we head into the weekend, there are no signs of any big heat. The question is how long this dry air sticks around. We'll talk about that coming up, Ashley.
Well, Mike, I know that you had been talking about all of the rain that we were going to be getting over the weekend. We got a lot of it in the last 24 hours. Look at this video from Falls of Neuse Road in Raleigh. This right here is why you don't drive through floodwaters. Already you got nearly 3 inches of rain. All of this created a mess on greenways in Wake and Johnston counties. WRAL's Brett Neese has the story after trekking through the mud.
Residents I talked to say that water like this on the trail sometimes takes days, even weeks to subside. And even when it does, they tell me that the trail is still sometimes unusable because of the mess it leaves behind.
We're kind of getting a little irritated with it.
That's how Jeff Gray and his neighbors feel about their limited access to the Crabtree Creek Greenway Trail. Gray says anytime we get any amount of rainfall, it leaves the access point near his house looking like this.
Well, this is pretty bad. I would say there's sections up ahead that we can't get to right here, but there's definitely sections that are worse than this. They're probably 1.5 foot deep of water.
Last July, the city began work to fix a nearly mile-long stretch of the Greenway where erosion caused damage not far from where Gray lives. That project was supposed to wrap up this spring. The city says heavy rainfall this past winter caused more issues, and now the project won't wrap up until October. Gray is worried more rainfall like this weekend will create a longer delay. He's hoping the work will solve drainage issues near his access point.
It's a big part of why we like this neighborhood and why we live here.
Farther down the trail in Clayton, crews shut down access to the Riverwalk on the Neuse because of the high waters.
I've never seen it this bad out here. I have seen this river pretty flooded, but not this bad.
This part of the trail will likely be back open tomorrow morning, but back in Raleigh, that won't be the case.
Normal is probably not going to happen because it'll be covered in mud for weeks if they don't come and scrape it or something. So 2 to 3 days probably for the water to even go down.
Brett Neese, WRAL News, Raleigh.
Now, despite the holiday weekend, it has been a pretty busy day, I should say, for news. So we want to get you caught up now. Here are the 5 things you should know right now. 2 people were taken to the hospital after a serious crash this afternoon in Roseboro. Video here from the Breaking News Tracker shows this scene on Hobbs Road. A pickup truck pulling a large trailer went off the road there and hit a tree. Troopers on the scene did not share how this crash happened exactly, but they did say the 2 people injured are in serious condition. The power is back on in the Village District finally in Raleigh. Several spots went hours without it after yesterday's storms. Several buildings didn't have power, including the library and the Fresh Market. The business owners there believe all of this started after a transformer was flooded last night around 7:30. We're working to learn more about a crash this afternoon on Six Forks Road in Raleigh. Some video here from the scene. This is near the Target in that area and the Six Forks Station Shopping Center. Officers closed some lanes there as they removed the car and they cleaned up the street. They haven't said how many people were involved or if anyone was seriously hurt.
2 people are in custody after Highway Patrol chased a driver this afternoon in Durham County. Troopers tell us this all started on I-85 when the driver hit a patrol car. It ended with that car crashing on East Pettigrew Street. When the WRAL breaking news tracker arrived, a crew was loading the car onto a tow truck. Charges may be on the way for drug possession and failure to stop. The Wilson County Middle School, hit by an EF3 tornado, will soon get some temporary classrooms. The Board of Education leased some trailers to hold 8 different classrooms while repairs continue on Springfield Middle School. The trailers should arrive by the end of the month and will be fully set up with desks and all by mid-October. Voting season is about to begin in North Carolina. On Friday, election workers will start sending out mail-in absentee ballots to voters who request them. Our state is the first to kick off the voting process. WRAL Capitol Bureau Chief Laura Leslie shows you how it works.
Any eligible voter can vote by mail in North Carolina, no excuse needed. But unlike in some other states, you have to request a ballot. You can fill out a hard copy form, or you can do it online at the State Board of Elections website. First, you'll enter your name and birth date so they can check that you're a registered voter. Then you'll be asked to verify your identity. State Elections Director Karen Brinson Bell says this is to make sure no one else can request your ballot without your permission.
It's your driver's license number or DMV issued ID number or the last 4 of your social.
Once you fill out the online request form and sign it, it goes to your County Board of Elections office, where it should be processed in 2 or 3 days. You can keep tabs on your ballot through Ballot Tracks. It's a free service you can sign up for online at the State Board of Elections website. It follows your ballot throughout the process.
So the tracking process begins once the ballot is mailed out from the County Board office, and then it continues where the voter can follow their mail piece to their home, and then once they mail it back, they can track it all the way back to the County Board of Elections.
One important point this year, there is no longer a 3-day grace period for ballots postmarked by Election Day to arrive in the mail. Your completed ballot has to make it back to your County Board of Elections by Election Day, November 5th, to be counted, so mail it in early. Laura Leslie, WRAL News, Raleigh.
And if you prefer to vote in person, early voting runs from October 17th through November 2nd. Election Day is November 5th. You can learn about all your voting options at NC Capitol on WRAL.com.
College students are back on campus, and a college party unlike any other that I can remember is going on down in Chapel Hill right now. They call it Flagstock. This all stems from that group of fraternity brothers that held up the American flag last semester during a protest on campus. This viral video here went everywhere, and a GoFundMe then raised $500,000 to throw these fraternity brothers what they described as a rager. Well, today is the day of that rager. The location and the details were kept under wraps for quite a while. Now the cat is out of the bag. WRAL's Eric Miller joining us live from the party. How big of a crowd is there out there? What's it looking like so far, Eric?
Well, Dan, first things first, you can definitely hear it's already loud and things are definitely getting a little bit crowded here. Just in the last hour, we've started to see students trickling in. Of course, invites going out to every member of UNC Student Greek Life, in addition to the 10 fraternities who are involved with holding up that flag. Doing this by the numbers here, we've got 1 VIP area, 2 beer ice luges in place, at least a dozen cornhole boards as well. That, of course, in addition to the $500,000 raised for this party.
Standard, it sounds like pretty standard college fare. Have you talked to students? How are they reacting to all this?
Now, Dan, the students who are out here definitely seem to be having a good time, but from conversations we've had from folks, it seems like opinions on UNC's campus right now are very much split. One student we were talking to told us that even among the Greek life organizations, those fraternities and sororities, some groups are actually encouraging their members to stay away from this party, feeling it's essentially a bad look to be out here. Others, though, saying, hey, come on, this is going to be a good time. It's a good look. The more, the merrier.
That makes it seem as though there are some political connotations here. Organizers have tried to buck that. They've insisted this is not political, that it is a nonpartisan event. Is that the vibe, I guess, you're getting being there?
Well, Dan, it's certainly a reason that so many of those Greek life organizations were nervous, right? But the organizers here, they insist, despite the protests that spawned this party, despite everything going on, the election, all of the rancor, that this is a non-political, non-partisan event. Still, you take a look at the lineup, though. We've got country singer John Rich, very outspoken supporter of President Trump, a guy who holds a lot of Republican fundraisers at his house in Nashville. Ditto for Lee Greenwood, singer of God Bless the USA. He's a very outspoken supporter of President Trump as well. So even though this is being pitched as a nonpartisan event, there's certainly a lot of folks out there who maybe feel it's leaning one way more than the other.
Well, we'll see if they stick to just music tonight. Eric, thank you so much. We'll continue to check in with Eric throughout the evening. Appreciate the report. Now, this party, again, is being something that's touted as something that's about patriotism, about the group that held up the American flag and celebrating that. But we do have to remember what sparked the protests on UNC's campus to begin with and the war that continues in Gaza. The conflict and the protests have not stopped. And for the last 2 days, we have seen massive unrest in Israel. There are many different voices in this conversation. Ashley, tonight you hear from a unique one, a man whose childhood friend is still being held hostage.
Yeah, that's right, Dan. Alon Tal is the friend of Keith Siegel, a Chapel Hill man, still in Hamas custody. Tal has also served as a member of the Israeli legislature. Up next, Tal joins us here on WRAL News at 7 to talk about the war in Gaza, the ongoing negotiations, the hostages, and the massive protests. While many Americans didn't work today because of the federal holiday, many people in Israel did not work today because they went on strike. 500,000 Israelis took to the streets in multiple cities protesting over a Gaza ceasefire deal that has not yet come to fruition. Tel Aviv's airport halted departures for 2 hours. The country's largest labor union threatened to shut down the entire economy. This all comes after 6 more hostages were found dead in Gaza over the weekend. All were kidnapped by Hamas when the group attacked Israel on October 7th last year. Negotiations over a ceasefire for hostages deal have been going on for months. President Biden thinks the Israeli government hasn't done enough. He was actually asked about that earlier today. Take a listen.
Mr. President, do you think it's time for Prime Minister Netanyahu to do more on this issue? Do you think he's doing enough?
No.
Biden also said he is close to presenting a final ceasefire deal to negotiators. You may remember a man from Chapel Hill is among those still in Hamas custody. Keith Siegel and his wife Aviva were captured on October 7th. Aviva was released about a month later. A friend of the couple, Alon Tal, joins me now to talk about the ongoing negotiations, the hostages, and the massive protests that have happened over the last couple of days in Israel. Alon, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
People around the world have been sharing their grief and outrage over the murders of these 6 hostages. Walk me through how you have been processing this news with Keith still in captivity.
Well, this has been a grim day, truly a dark day, I think, for so many Israelis, and not just Israelis, because I think over the last almost a year now, the efforts of the hostage families to present their children, wives, husbands, whoever is in captivity as human beings has really touched people. And so it is a heartbreaking moment for us, and many Israelis are frustrated because they think that surely Hamas is to blame for this horrendous situation, from the actual kidnapping to the murdering. But could we do more? Could Israel make greater concessions to bring these hostages home? And I think the consensus is we need to do more.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, we've been watching these powerful demonstrations in Israel from people calling for a truce with Hamas. Do you think this is going to have an impact? We heard from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today. He seems like he is actually doubling down.
Yeah, I mean, there's an unfortunate political component to the present dynamics, and that is that Prime Minister Netanyahu formed a coalition. In Israel, we don't have a separation of powers like they do in in the U.S., we have a coalition government like in Europe. And so he is dependent on far right-wing parties, really outside the general consensus of Israeli politics, who oppose any kind of reapproachment or any kind of a deal, saying it shows weakness. And mostly they just seem to want to continue the war ad infinitum. And so Netanyahu, were he to go ahead and move forward on a political or a negotiated agreement with the Hamas, might lose control of his government and have his coalitional partners leave that and leave him subject to elections.
Thank you for all of your insights. While we wait for Keith Siegel's release, what should we know about him?
Keith Siegel is a gentle-spirited, quiet, smart, loving person. I don't think there's ever been a person who said anything really negative about him, as far as I know. He's beloved by his wife and his children and his grandchildren and his community. He lives on a kibbutz, a communal farm. And we all are so hopeful that despite the unbelievable atrocities which he's surely endured during the past year, that he will indeed be able to return home and resume his life and continue to do the good things he did as a representative of North Carolina in Israel.
Alon Tal, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Mike, let's take a look at the weather. We do have some rain moving out at this point.
Yeah, we've got a cold front that's passed. The winds have been coming out of the northeast, but the dry air is delayed. We'll get here later tonight, and you'll definitely notice a difference when you head out in the morning. But the rain we're seeing today or have seen, not anything like what we saw yesterday. So if you have a grill out going on this evening, the weather will be fine. Unless you're down east toward the coast, you still have some rain left to go. Live Cam Network, Southern Pines, beautiful sunset in progress. Look at all the blue there. Fayetteville, blinding sunshine. The Woodpeckers are playing the Myrtle Beach Pelicans this evening over at Segra Stadium. Clinton, a lot of cloud cover, and North Hills, a beautiful sunset in progress, although our little banner is covering it. But trust me, it looks pretty nice out there. 79 right now at the airport. Notice the dew points are still high, but this time tomorrow they're going to be in the 50s. It's that dry air up to the north that'll be making its way in, and we'll transition back into a fall feel. In fact, it starts overnight. Here are the hour-by-hour temperatures at midnight. We're at 70 degrees. Tomorrow morning when you step out, there should be full sunshine, 61 at 7 and 8 a.m. 73 was the low this morning, so that 61 will feel a whole lot better. And hour-by-hour dew points, they were in the 70s over the weekend. We had 93 yesterday with dew points in the 70s. It just felt nasty. And then by daybreak, our dew points will be feeling much better. They will be in the 50s thanks to our cold front that's coming on by. High pressure will build in. Now, temporarily, the dew points drop. They'll start to surge back at the end of the week. I'll show you why coming up. But then there's a secondary shot of drier air that will come in over the weekend. I think it'll be a bigger one than what we're experiencing right now. So we're seeing the dew points in the 40s to the north. It's that dry air that will be making its way in. And now that we're in the month of September, we'll tend to see more of these fronts coming in to bring bigger and bigger shots of cooler and less humid air. Here is the dew point forecast for the next several days. 68-degree dew point at 8 o'clock this evening. There's all the dry air. Watch how all that moisture gets pushed offshore. So throughout the day tomorrow, our dew points will be in the 50s. They'll be in the 50s tomorrow night. Into Wednesday, they rise just a little bit, but in the morning on Wednesday, we'll wake up to more 50s because the air will be dry overnight Tuesday into Wednesday morning. And then this moisture starts to surge back as high pressure moves offshore, pushing the moisture back in. So by Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, the dew points are on the rise, but here comes the next front. Now, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, there may be some rain in the forecast, but once that front moves by Saturday night, look at the bigger push of dry air that comes in. So Sunday and Monday and Tuesday of next week will be a whole lot less humid, and it will turn cooler, especially by daybreak. Take a look at the lows. Sunday morning, 60, 53 Monday morning, 55 Tuesday morning. By far, that's some of the coolest air we've seen. But even during the next 7 days, we're not going to be really all that warm. Maybe low 80s Friday and maybe mid 80s Saturday with a chance for some showers and storms.
All right, Mike, thank you so much. Before we go to break, we do have a breaking update for you on that juvenile who escaped from the detention center in Butner. WRAL now confirming just moments ago that this young man, Zane Sesnick, was indicted for murder in Wake County, and he is now out of custody. Law enforcement believe he poses a danger to the public. He escaped just before 2:30 this afternoon. Again, he was indicted for murder in Wake County. If you see him, call police. We are back with tonight's One Last Thing next.
Tonight, we've got 3 stories about North Carolina history to tell you about, from the coast to central North Carolina to the mountains.
Why don't we start in the Outer Banks, a nonprofit there working to preserve a historic structure at the Oregon Inlet. The life-saving station has stood since 1898. It's on the National Register of Historic Places, but it's fallen into disrepair. It needs to be moved for protection from the storms and the shoreline erosion. The Outer Banks Coast Guard History Preservation Group wants to buy it and turn it into a multi-purpose space. There's no timeline for when that could happen.
Okay, so now let's move to the middle-ish part of the state, specifically Alamance County. On this day, 134 years ago, Elon University opened its doors. It was founded by the United Church of Christ. The school got its name because of the land where it was built. It was filled with oak trees, and Elon is the Hebrew word for oak. As the school grew, so did the surrounding town. It actually changed its name to Elon in the year 2000.
It's in the middle-ish part of the state. Yeah, I think you're right about that. Now to the North Carolina mountains. On this day in 1952, William Umstead officially dedicated the Grandfather Mountain mile-high swing bridge. His daughter was the first person to cross it, and she is a brave soul because it was all made of wood back then. It wasn't until 1999 the bridge was rebuilt using galvanized steel. True to its name, the bridge is just over a mile above sea level, though it's only 80 feet off the ground, but you sure feel up there when you're on it.
And one last thing we want to tell you, a Paralympian from North Carolina won gold in Paris today. Morgan Stickney is from Cary. She had a very rare condition that prevents a sufficient amount of blood from reaching her limbs. Well, today she won the women's 400-meter freestyle, setting a Paralympic record.
Wow.
Her teammate Mackenzie Cohn joined her on the podium, taking the silver medal.
That's a great picture.
Oh,
amazing.
So good.
Well, we appreciate you being with us tonight. Thank you for making WRAL your choice for local news. Our next newscast is at 10 o'clock on Fox 50 and again at 11 back here on WRAL.
Have a great night.
Keep watching WRAL News over the air Channel 34 and Spectrum Channel 1257.